Hi guys, it's Mrs. Curry. Today we read chapters 15 and 16 of BFG, and these are some really exciting chapters. They really set up the rising action so that we're about to hit the climax of our story. We're about to see what really happens if we're climbing up that story mountain. We're right at the top, and we're about to see what happens before we make our descent. So we're doing some awesome, cool stuff today. So you really want to pay attention when you're reading today's chapters. You have 3 words today, and your words are thrashing, which means tossing about, like tossing and turning. So can you say the word thrashing? Great job. Our second word is aghast. Can you say aghast? And look at this little guy's face. What do you think aghast means? Yeah, it means shocked or amazement, like struck with shock or amazement. Like, wow. And our last one is famished. And you can see that this little girl here, she looks really hungry. And that's what famished means, very hungry. So today you're going to take a second and I want you to write down all your vocabulary words, copy them down into your notebook so that you're ready to go. Go ahead and pause this video so that you can make sure you get them down. Awesome job. Okay, so today you're in your packet of pages 28, 29, and 30. And page 28, the quick write is, write about a time that you've ever helped or wanted to help a stranger. Write about it. So have you ever wanted to help a stranger and maybe you were in the grocery store and you helped somebody pick up something, or you were walking down the street and somebody dropped something. Did you help them and pick them up? What did you do to help? Or was there a time that maybe you didn't help but you wanted to? Go ahead and write that down. Awesome. So today what we're going to be, I told you, this is going to be one of the exciting chapters. We're really getting to kind of climb up that story mountain, and we're right at the top. Think of like a roller coaster. We're right at the top before we start to make the drop and the fun stuff happens. Okay, so this is our really big climax of our story. We're about to hit it. It's exciting. Today you're going to work on pages 28 and 29. So normal stuff with our vocab, our true and false, our questions, our comp questions that we're writing. But page 30 looks like this. It says the great plan, and it's all about sequencing. So first we do this, next we do this, and last we do this. So we're going to read about Sophie's great plan today, especially to get to save all those kids from being eaten. So you're going to want to maybe draw a picture and then write out what each part of her plan is. Okay, so making sure that you are all ready to learn today and ready to go. All right, so get comfy and listen up. Today's first chapter is the great plan. We've absolutely got to stop them, Sophie cried. Put me in your back pocket quick, and we'll chase after them and warn everyone in England that they're coming. Redunculous and impossible, the BFG said. They is going 2 times as fast as me, and they is finishing their guzzle before we is halfway. But we can't just sit here and do nothing, Sophie cried. How many girls and boys are they going to eat tonight? Many, the BFG said. The flesh lump eating giant alone has the most squawksling, whoopsie appetite. He'll snatch them out of their beds while they're sleeping. Like peas out of a poodle, the BFG said. I can't bear to think of it. Then don't, said the BFG. For years and years I is sitting here on this very rock every night, night after night, when they is galloping away, and I is feeling so sad for all the human beings they is going to gobble up. But I has had to get used to it. There is nothing I can do. If I wasn't a titchy little runt giant, only 24 feet high, then I would be stopping them. But that is absolutely out of the window. Do you always know where they're going? Sophie said. Always, said the BFG. Every night they is yelling at me about where as they go boostling past. The other day they was yelling, we is off to Mississippi and Missouri to guzzle them both. Disgusting, Sophie said. I hate them. She and the big friendly giant sat quietly side by side on the blue rock in the gathering dusk. Sophie had never felt so hopeless in her life. After a while, she stood up and cried out, I just can't stand it. Just think of those poor girls and boys who are going to be eaten alive in a very hour's time. We can't just sit here and do nothing. We've got to go after those brutes. No, said the BFG. We must, Sophie said. Why won't you go? The BFG sighed and shook his head. I has told you 5 or 6 times, and the third will be the last. I is never showing myself to human beings. Why ever not? If I do, they'll just be putting me in the zoo with all the giggly-graphs and the caterpillars. Nonsense, Sophie said. And they'll be sending you straight back to the orphanage. Grown-up human beings is not famous for their kindness. They's all squiffle-watters and gig-sluggers. That simply isn't true, Sophie said angrily. Some of them are very kind indeed. Who? Said the BFG. Name one. The Queen of England, Sophie said. You can't call her a squiffwatter or a ging-slugger. Well, the BFG said. You can't call her a squick peep or not muncher either, Sophie said, getting angrier and angrier. The flesh lump eater is longing dearly to guzzle her up, the BFG said. Who, the Queen? Sophie said. Yes, the BFG answered. Flesh lump eater says he has never eaten a queen, and he thinks perhaps she has an especially scrumdiddlyumptious flavor. How dare he, Sophie cried. But the flesh lump eater says there is too many soldiers around her palace, and he doesn't try it. And there they are, sitting on the rocks, just talking. He better not, Sophie said. He is also saying he would like very much to guzzle one of the soldiers in his pretty red suit, but he's worried about those big black furry hats they is wearing. He thinks they may be sticking in his throat. I hope he chokes, Sophie said. Flesh lump eater is a very careful giant, the BFG said. Sophie was silent for a few moments. Then suddenly, in a voice filled with excitement, she cried out, I've got it, by golly, I think I've got it. Got what? Asked the BFG. The idea, cried Sophie. We will go to the Queen. That's a terrific idea. If I went and told the Queen about these disgusting man-eating giants, I'm sure she'd do something about it. The BFG looked down at her sadly and shook his head. She has never believed in you, he said. Never in a month of Mondays. I think she would. Never, said the BFG. It's sounding such a wonky tall story, the Queen would be laughing and saying, What awful rub squash. She would not. Of course she would, said the BFG. I have told you before that the human beings is simply not believing in giants. Then it's up to you to find us a way of making her believe in them, Sophie said. And how is you getting to see the Queen anyway? BFG said. Now hold on a second, Sophie said. Just you hold on 1 second, because I got another idea. Your idea is full of codswoggle, BFG said. Not this one, Sophie said. You say that if we tell the Queen, she would never believe us. I am certain that she wouldn't, the BFG said. But we aren't going to tell her, Sophie said. We don't have to tell her. We can make her dream it. That's an even more froth-boggling suggestion. Dreams is lots of fun, but nobody is believing in dreams either. You was only believing in a dream while you was actually dreaming it. But as soon as you was waking up, you was saying, oh, thank goodness, it was only a dream. Don't you worry about that part of it, Sophie said. I can fix that. Never can you fix that, BFG said. I can, I swear I can. But first of all, let me ask you a very important question. Here it is. Can you make a person dream absolutely anything in the world? Anything you like, the BFG said proudly. If I said I wanted to dream that I was flying in a bathtub with silver wings, could you make me dream it? I could, said the BFG. But how, Sophie said. You obviously don't have exactly that dream in your collection. I do not, said the BFG, but I could be soon mixing it up. How could you mix it up? It's a little bit like mixing a cake, the BFG said. If you was putting in the right amounts of all the different things into it, you was making the cake come out any way you want. Sugary, spongely, curranty, Christmassy, gobswitchy. It's the same with dreams. Go on, Sophie said. I has dillions of dreams on my shelves, right or left? Right, Sophie said. I has dreams about bathtubs, lots of them. I has dreams about silver wings. I has dreams about flying. So all he has to do is mix those dreams together with the proper way, and I is very quickly making a dream where you was flying in a bathtub with silver wings. I see what you mean, Sophie said, but I didn't know that you could mix one dream with another. Dreams like being mixed. They's getting very lonesome all by themselves in those glassy bottles." "Right," Sophie said. "Now then, do you have dreams about the Queen of England?" "Oh, lots of them," BFG said. "And about giants?" "Of course," said the BFG. "And about giants eating people?" "Swiggles of them," said the BFG. "And about little girls like me?" "Those are the most commonest of all. I has bottles and bottles of dreams about little girls." "And you can mix 'em up just how I want you to?" Sophie asked. "Well, of course," said the BFG. "But how is this helping us?" "I think you is barking up the wrong dog." "Now hold on," Sophie said. "Listen carefully. I want you to mix a dream which you will blow into the Queen of England's bedroom when she is asleep. And this is how it will go." "Now hang on a minute," BFG said. "How was I possibly getting near enough to the Queen of England's bedroom to blow in my dream? You is talking dumb, silly." "I'll tell you that later," Sophie said. "For the moment, please listen carefully. Here is the dream that I want you to mix. Are you paying attention?" "Very close," said the BFG. "I want the Queen to dream that 9 disgusting giants, each one of them 50 feet tall, are galloping to England in the night. She must dream their names as well." "What are their names again?" "Flesh lump eater, man hugger, bone cruncher, child chewer, meat dripper, guzzard gulper, maid masher, blood bottler, and butcher boy." "Let her dream all of those names," Sophie said. "And let her dream that they will be creeping into England in the depths of the witching hour and snatching little boys and girls from their beds. Let her dream that they will be reaching into the bedroom windows and pulling the little boys and girls out of their beds. And then," Sophie paused. "Do they eat them on the spot, or do they carry them away first?" she asked. "They usually just pop them straight into the mouth like popcorn," said the BFG. "Okay, put that in the dream," Sophie said. "And then the dream must say that when their tummies are full, they will be going galloping back to giant country where no one can find them." "Is that all?" said the BFG. "Certainly not," Sophie said. "You must then explain to the Queen in her dream that there is a big friendly giant who can tell her where all these beasts are living, and that so that she can send her soldiers and her armies to capture them once and for all. And now let her dream one last very important thing. Let her dream that there is a little girl called Sophie sitting on her windowsill who will tell her where the big friendly giant is hiding." "Where is he hiding?" said the BFG. "We'll come to that later," Sophie said. "So the Queen dreams her dream, right?" "Right," said the BFG. "Then she wakes up and the first thing she thinks is, 'Oh, what a horrid dream. I'm so glad it was only a dream.' And then she looks up from her pillow, and what does she see?" "What does she see?" said the BFG. "She sees a little girl named Sophie sitting on her windowsill, right there in real life before her very eyes." "How is you going to be sitting on the Queen's windowsill, may I beg?" the BFG said. "You are going to put me there," Sophie said. "And that's the lovely part about it. If someone dreams that there's a little girl on her windowsill, and then she wakes up and sees the little girl really sitting there, that is a dream come true, is it not?" "I is beginning to see where you are driving to," the BFG said. "If the Queen is knowing that part of her dream is true, then perhaps she's believing the rest of it is true as well." "That's about it," Sophie said. "But I shall have to convince her of that myself. You said you was wanting the dream to stay there is a big friendly giant who is also going to talk to the Queen?" "Yes, absolutely," Sophie said. "You must. You're the only one who can tell her where to find the other giants." "How is I meeting the Queen?" asked the BFG. "I is not wanting to be shooted by her soldiers." "The soldiers are only in the front of the palace," Sophie said. "At the back there is a huge garden. There are no soldiers at all in there. There is a very high wall with spikes on it around the garden to stop people from climbing in. But you could just simply walk over it." "How is you knowing all this about the Queen's palace?" the BFG asked. "Last year I was in a different orphanage," Sophie said. "I was in London, and we used to go for walks all around there." "Is you helping me to find the palace?" BFG said. "I has never dared to go hide and sneaking around London in my life." "I'll show you the way," Sophie said. "I is frightened of London," the BFG said. "Don't be," Sophie said. "It's full of tiny dark streets, and there are very few people about in the witching hour." The BFG picked Sophie up between one finger and thumb and placed her gently in the palm of the other hand. "Is the Queen's palace very big?" he asked. There he is holding Sophie. Huge, Sophie said. Then how is we finding the right bedroom? That's up to you, Sophie said. You're supposed to be an expert at that sort of thing. And you is absolutely sure the queen will not put me in the zoo with all the caterpillars? Of course she won't, Sophie said. You'll be a hero, and you'll never have to eat another snozcumber again. Sophie saw the big FG's eyes widen. He licked his lips. You mean it? He said. You really mean it? No more disgustive snozcumbers? You couldn't get one if you wanted to, Sophie said. Humans don't grow them. That did it. The BFG got to his feet. What is it you want me to mix this special dream? He asked. Now, Sophie said, at once. When is we going to see the queen? He said. Tonight, Sophie said, as soon as you've mixed the dream. Tonight, the BFG cried. Why such a flush-blinking flurry? If we can't save tonight's children, we can anyway save tomorrow's. What is more, I am getting famished. I haven't had a thing to eat in 24 hours. Then, we better get crackling, the BFG said, moving toward the back of the cave. Sophie kissed him on the tip of his thumb. I know you could do it, she said. Come on, let's hurry. So that is our first chapter for today, The Great Plan. So thinking about what Sophie's working on, what are her 3 steps in her plan? Make sure that you're writing that down on page 30. Mixing the dream. It was now dark. The night had already begun. The BFG, with Sophie sitting on her hand, hurried into the cave and put on those brilliant, blinding lights that seemed to come from nowhere. He placed Sophie on the table. Stay there, please, he said, and no chittering. I is needing to listen only to silence when I is mixing up such naughty, plexicated dreams. He hurried away from her. He got out an enormous empty glass jar, the size of a washing machine. He clutched it to his chest and hurried toward the shelves on which the thousands and thousands of smaller jars containing the captured dreams. Dreams about giants, he muttered to himself. This giant is guzzling human beings. No, not that one, nor that one. Here's one. Oh, and here's another. He grabbed the jars and unscrewed the tops. He tipped the dreams into the enormous jar he was clutching, and as each one went in, Sophie caught a glimpse of the small sea green blob trembling from one jar to another. BFG hurried toward the other shelf. Now, he said, I is wanting dreams about giggle houses for girls and boggle boxes for boys. He was becoming very tense now. Sophie could almost see the excitement bubbling inside him as he scurried back and forth across the cave. There must have been 50,000 dreams altogether up there on them shelves, but he seemed to know almost exactly where every one of them was. Dreams about little girls, he muttered. And dreams about me, the BFG. Come on, hurry up. Get on with it now. Where in the wonky world is I keeping those? And so it went on. In about a half an hour, the BFG had found all the dreams he wanted and tipped them into one huge jar. He put the jar on the table, and Sophie sat watching him but said nothing. Inside the big jar, lying at the bottom of it, she could clearly see about 50 of those oval, sea-green, jellyish shapes, all pulsing gently in and out, some lying on top of others, but each one still a quite separate individual dream. Now we is mixing 'em, the BFG announced. He went to the cupboard where he kept his bottles of frobscottle, and from it he took out a gigantic egg beater. It was one of those that had a handle which you turn, and down below there were a lot of overlapping blades that go whizzing around. He inserted the bottom of the contraption into the jar where the dreams were lying. Watch, he said, and he started turning the handle very fast. Here he is getting all the jars and putting it into this big jar here, and then mixing up all the dreams over here. Flashes of green and blue exploded inside the jar. The dreams were being whisked together into a sea green froth. The poor thing, Sophie cried. They's not feeling it, the BFG said. Dreams is not like human beings or animals. They has no brain. They is made of snozumums. After about a minute, the BFG stopped whisking. The whole bottle was now full to the brim with large bubbles. They were almost exactly like the bubbles we ourselves blow from soapy water, except these had even brighter and more beautiful colors swimming in the surfaces. Keep watching, the BFG said. Quite slowly, the topmost bubble rose off the neck of the jar and floated away. A second one followed, then a third and a fourth, and soon the cave was filled with hundreds of beautifully colored bubbles, all drifting gently through the air. It was truly a wonderful sight. As Sophie watched them, they all started floating towards the cave entrance, which was still open. "They're going out," Sophie whispered. "Of course they are," the BFG said. "Where to?" "Those is little dream bits that I ain't using anymore. They is going back to the misty country to join up with the proper dreams. It's all a bit beyond me." "Dreams is full of mystery and magic," BFG said. "Do not try to understand them. Look in the big bottle and you will see the dream that you is wanting for the queen." She stared into the great jar. On the bottom something was thrashing around wildly. "Good heavens!" she cried. "Is that it?" "That's it," the BFG said. "But it's horrible. It's jumping around. It wants to get out." "That's because it's a trouble humper," the BFG said. "It's a nightmare." "Oh, but I don't want to give the queen a nightmare," Sophie cried. "If she is dreaming about giants guzzling up little boys and girls, then what is you expecting except a nightmare?" "Oh, no," cried Sophie. "Oh, yes," cried the BFG. "A dream where you is seeing little childers being eaten is about the most frightsome trouble-humping dream you can get. It's a kicksy bog thumper. It's a whoopsie grab switcher. It is all of them riddled into one. It is as bad as the dream I blew into that flesh lump eater this afternoon. It's worse." Sophie stared down the fearsome nightmare dream that she was still thrashing away in the huge jar. It was much larger than the others. It was about the size and shape, shall we say, of a turkey's egg. It was a jellyfish. It had tinges of bright scarlet deep inside. There was something terrible about the way she was throwing it and thrashing itself against the sides of the jar. "I don't want to give the queen a nightmare," Sophie said. "I was thinking," the BFG said, "that your queen will be happy to have a nightmare if a nightmare is going to save a lot of human beings from being gobbled up by filthsome giants. Am I right or am I left?" "I suppose you're right," Sophie said. "It's got to be done. She'll be getting over it pretty soon," said the BFG. "Have you put all the other important things into it?" "When I is blowing that dream into the queen's bedroom," the BFG said, "she'll be dreaming every single thingaling that you is asking me to make her dream about. About me sitting on the windowsill? That part is very strong. And about the big friendly giant? I's putting in a nice long goblet about him," he said. Then he screwed the lid on tightly onto the small jar. "That's it," he announced. "We is now ready." He fetched his suitcase and put the small jar into it. Why bother to take a great big suitcase when you've got only one jar? You could put the jar in your pocket. Sophie looked down at her and said, the BFG looked out at him and said, "By goggles," he said, taking out the jar. "Your head is not quite full of grim sludge after all. I can see you was not born last week." "Oh, thank you, kind sir." "Is you ready to leave?" the BFG asked. "I'm ready," Sophie said. Her heart was beginning to thump as she thought of what they were about to do. It was really a wild and crazy thing. Perhaps they would both be thrown into prison. The BFG would put on his great big black cloak. He tucked the jar into the pocket of his cloak. He picked up his long trumpet-like dream blower. Then he turned and looked at Sophie, who was still on the tabletop. "The dream bottle is in my pocket," he said. "Is you going to sit in there with it as we travel?" "Never!" cried Sophie. "I refuse to sit next to that beastly thing." "Well, then, where is you going to sit?" the BFG asked her. She thought about it, and then she said, "If you would be so kind enough to swivel one of your big, lovely ears so that it's lying flat like a dish, that would make a very cozy place for me to sit." "By gumbo, that's a squawkling idea," the BFG said. Slowly, he swiveled his huge right ear until it was a great shell facing the heavens. He lifted Sophie up and placed her onto it. The ear itself, which was about the size of a large tea tray, was full of the same channels and crinkles as a human ear. It was extremely comfortable. "I hope I don't fall down your ear hole," Sophie said, edging away from the large hole beside her. "Be very careful that you don't. You'd be giving me a cronking earache." The nice thing about being there was that she could whisper directly into his ear. "You was tickling me a bit," the BFG said. "Please don't jiggle about." "I'll try not to," Sophie said. "Are we ready?" "Ow! Don't do that!" yelled the BFG. "I didn't do anything," Sophie said. "You was talking way too loud. You was forgetting that I is hearing every thingling 50 times louder than usual, and there you is shouting right inside my ear." Oh gosh, I forgot about that. I'm sorry. "Your voice is sounding like thunder and trumpets. I'm so sorry, Sophie whispered. Is that better? No, cried the BFG. It sounds as though you are shooting off buggle-bombs. Then, how can I talk to you? Sophie whispered. Don't, cried the BFG. Please don't. Each word is like you dropping buzz bombs in my ear hole. Sophie tried speaking right under her breath. Is this better? She said. That's better, the BFG said. Now I is hearing you very nicely. What is it you were trying to say to me just now? I was saying, are we ready? We is off, cried the BFG. We is off to meet Her Majesty, the Queen. Outside the cave, he rolled the large round stone back into place and set off on a tremendous gallop. All right, so right now we're at that peak of our climax mountain. We're right towards the top, and we're about to see what happens, okay? So we're about to really hit the top of that mountain right there. So make sure today that you are working on pages 28, 29, and 30. And you're going to upload them to Seesaw or send them to me as a text message, whichever one you think is easiest. I hope that you enjoyed our story today, and we'll be back next week with the next part of our story. Bye, guys.